morning, students. Let's continue from where we stopped yesterday. We're on page 183 of your textbook. We stopped at just before the last para of the right column. But let's go back a little so that we get the connection easily. Furman has finished his presentation with the skeleton and the gallows and all, and made a big impression. Now soon after him comes Miss Dare's presentation. So that's on this right column, just 6 or 8 lines above the last paragraph. Miss Dare's contribution was something of an anticlimax. That means it was a peak of excitement and interest, and now it came down because her presentation was not like Furman's. So Miss Dare's contribution was something of an anticlimax after Furman's performance, and she seemed to realize that. She was aware of that. She spoke about the problems of which all humanity has to face in terms of sickness and disease, and the advantages gained by interchange of knowledge, advice, and assistance. So this was her contribution. It was physiology. So while Furman put the skeleton in order to show that all are the same, she here looks at another common factor, namely disease and sickness. And today, in today's world just now, with corona going everywhere, it's very true that there's no difference of any sort, neither race, color, creed, religion, country, nothing. So that's what she mentioned in her presentation also, that sickness and disease plague everyone in the world. There's no just sort of discrimination between one type, one race and another race, one country, one religion, one caste, or anything like that. And yet, how can we solve this problem? By coming together. Just as this disease has no discrimination, we too have to come together from whichever country, whatever the religion or state we have to come together and share our knowledge, okay, so that we can overcome this problem, as is happening in today's world also, that countries are sharing their knowledge about a vaccine and about cures, and this is what Ms. Dare was doing. She was expressing this in their presentation. The advantages thus gained by this interchange of knowledge, advice, suggestions, and also help. Countries are helping other countries with finances, with technical know-how, and other things. So that's what she mentioned. As you notice in each and every one of the presentations, there's somehow what is coming through is a commonness, the oneness of mankind. Whatever the differences be, but mankind is one ultimately. Miss Dodd reported on the period of history the class had studied, the Reformation in England. She told of the struggles of men of independent spirit against clerical domination and of their efforts to break from established religious traditions. From those early beginnings, gradually grew the idea of tolerance for the beliefs and cultures of others, and the now common interest in trying to study and understand those cultures. So we look at Ms. Dodd's presentation now. The period that they had to present was the Reformation in England, which was more or less 16th, 17th century. And there was a lot of religious upheaval with a lot of violence also because of a lack of tolerance of others' beliefs. Within Christianity itself, there were various types of beliefs within it, and they were attacking each other. And the Reformation was in a way an attempt to try and reform what was not good in Christianity in Europe. So reforming is to improve, to change for the better. So this was a period in English history, the Reformation. She told of the struggles of men of independent spirit. Now many of the traditions or the beliefs were in a way somehow not necessarily entirely valid. So there were people who were thinking differently, and for them it was very difficult. They were attacked by most who had the traditional beliefs. So that's what I said here, the struggles of men of independent spirit, those who thought differently from what was commonly thought and taught. And here, the ones who were dominating were the priests and the clergy, the bishops, the priests. These people in Christianity were dominating the others. So, in a way, it was a struggle for people who thought freely, independently, to express their views in the face of this suppression and domination. And therefore, their efforts to break from established religious traditions. So, what the traditions were going on, but they didn't agree with those traditions, but it was difficult for them to break away. From these early beginnings, gradually grew the idea of tolerance for the beliefs and cultures of others. So gradually, with a lot of struggle, people began to see that everything may not be exactly as it was believed or thought. And there was room therefore for other ideas also, other beliefs also. So this grew gradually after a lot of struggle, a lot of turmoil. So from these early beginnings, gradually grew the idea of tolerance, accepting, tolerating that others have their beliefs without suppressing them. And cultures of others, there are different cultures. You see, formerly, Europe was within itself, and they felt that Mediterranean Sea was in the middle of the whole world. Slowly they realized there were other peoples, other cultures in other parts of the world. And slowly they realized, therefore, that other cultures were also rich. It was a very gradual process which even today is not fully complete. So they began now, they grew the idea of tolerance for the beliefs and cultures of others, and the now common interest in trying to study and understand those cultures. Now, people from all countries are trying to understand and study other religions and cultures too. Therefore, in Europe, you will have a department of Indian culture. The eagerness to understand Indian culture better, its roots, its scriptures, all that. And so too, India and the East also study Western culture. So there's a greater interest therefore in coming to know one another's culture. And with this comes understanding and tolerance. When one understands the beliefs of the other and how they also make sense, how they are also good, then slowly beliefs and acceptance comes. Now we come to Denham's report. Denham's report was a bit of a shock. He severely criticized the general pattern of PT and games, emphasizing the serious limitations of the space obtaining and the effect of that limitation on their games activities. So Denham was a sort of a rebel in class. He thought differently, especially in this field of PT and games. He had his own ideas, and he somehow was not happy with the curriculum or the timetable with regard to that particular subject. Okay, so he started criticizing it very strongly, the whole program of physical training and games. And he said the limitation of space were not helpful in these PT and games. So he's saying there were a lot of limitations in space which were therefore not of any use. That because of that, PT and games are not of any use. He complained that the PT was ill-conceived and pointless. The whole subject, what was planned in that subject, he felt was of no use. Was ill-conceived means not well thought out. Okay, ill-conceived means not well thought out, not properly planned, and pointless, and it had no particular purpose. There wasn't any use in that. It served no goal. And the routine was monotonous. Every day the same thing. That is monotonous. Every day the same thing. It slowly becomes boring. He could see no advantage in doing it. So it's like no point in doing those PT exercises every time. A jolly good game was far better. Having a game instead of whatever was much better than doing those exercises. That's what he said. Apparently, he was voicing the opinion of all the boys. So apparently all the boys in the school also felt that way, especially the bigger boys, of course. For they cheered him loudly. So when he finished talking, there was a big cheer for him, because they all supported him in that. When the reports were over, Denon called two children at random from the audience and asked them to write the name of each teacher, including the head, on a slip of paper, including the headmaster and therefore. All the names of the staff, teachers, were written on each on a slip of paper. These slips were folded and placed in a hat, juggled vigorously. and then withdrawn one by one. So Denham's was the last report for that evening, for that session. And so as soon as that was over, he called two students at random. Okay? Two children, rather so younger students from the hall, and told them to write the name of every teacher on a slip of paper. These slips were folded so the names could not be seen and put in a hat, placed in a hat. And this hat was shaken about. Juggling here doesn't mean what jugglers do, tricks. Whereas all the slips of paper were moved about within that hat, mixed up thoroughly, you can say. So the hat was shaken, whatever way to make the slips totally mixed up, and one could not know which slip was on which slip, whose name was there. And then withdrawn one by one. So after the shaking of the slips and they were more or less all right, then one by one the slips were picked out. The names were Mr. Weston, Mrs. Dale Evans, and Miss Phillips. So these three names were picked out. After the names were picked out and announced, Denham and Miss Joseph led the others off the stage and the teachers took their seats. So once the names were read out from the three slips that were chosen, Denham and Miss Phillips, who were, and Miss Joseph rather, who were students, they led the other students who were sitting on the stage down. And now the teachers who were called out, they went and took their seats on the stage. Weston, big and bushily untidy between the two women. So Mr. Weston was rather large and untidy. Bushily means a lot of hair, or maybe a beard also. And so he was rather, what you can say, he was between the two teachers, that is, Miss Phillips and Mrs. Dale Evans. Then the questioning began. I believe I would have gone a long way to see what followed. That to see what followed was worth him coming even a longer way to see. It was an experience which I shall not easily forget. The questions were mostly from the two top classes, probably because the young children were either too timid or too uninformed to formulate their questions. So when he started listening to the questions and what happened, he was very impressed. It was an experience, he said, which he won't easily forget. The questions, of course, came mainly from the upper classes, as he mentions here, from the two top classes. Perhaps because the younger children were too nervous and too frightened to ask, or perhaps they didn't know enough. They were uninformed, means not having enough knowledge of what's happening to ask, to formulate their questions, to frame their questions properly. The teachers had no briefing and were often caught out stammering in their indecision. So the teachers also were not informed earlier that they would be chosen, nor did they know what questions they would face. So that's what is mentioned here. The teachers had no briefing, they were not informed, and were often caught out stammering. So because of that, being unprepared, they were stammering in their answers. Okay, they were not indecision because they couldn't decide what they wanted to say before. So on the spot, they had to decide. The frilly, seemingly brainless Miss Euphemia Phillips proved to be the coolest and best informed of the three. So among these three teachers that were on the stage, Miss Phillips seemed to be the best, the most intelligent, the calmest. Okay. Frilly, because I suppose her clothes usually often had frills. Frills are extra decorations that are stitched onto clothes, mainly female clothes, women's clothes, either for their skirts or their sleeves or whatever, or their collars or whatever. So that's why frilly. So the frilly, seemingly brainless, and she was not very outstanding most of the time. She was quiet, so people thought she wasn't very intelligent. Brainless means not having much brains. So people didn't expect her to have much brains, they thought she was just ordinary. But she, so seemingly brainless Miss Euphemia Phillips, proved to be the coolest and best informed of the three. She knew best what was happening. She dealt with questions put to her with candor. Candor means honesty, openness, not hiding anything, not trying to avoid anything, being straight and plain about things. So with candor and authority, but with that sureness of what she was saying. That is authority. Here, the authority doesn't mean ordering, but authority means fully confident about what you're saying. Honesty and yet authority. Confidence. And would often intervene skillfully to assist one of the others without causing embarrassment. So one of the other two teachers were facing difficulties in answering the question very easily and without showing anything unusual, she would come to their help and answer for them. Or try to explain without saying what they said was wrong. She would slowly take the discussion and try to solve it. So without embarrassing or making the other teachers there on the stage feel bad or feel sort of let down. So that's why she did things in a very calm way without drawing the attention and yet helping the other. Weston cut a very ridiculous figure. So Weston cut a ridiculous piece, like a totally failed figure, sir. He couldn't answer it properly. In the face of Denham's blunt criticism, Denham was totally blunt. He said things rather rude, not rudely, but harshly, without sort of mincing his words. So in front of Denham's blunt criticism and Fernman's adroit questioning. Adroit means very skillful, clever. Adroit is mainly used for speaking. Adroit, very clever, very thoughtful, knows exactly how to put things to his own advantage in a way, as he did with the skeleton. So with this adroit question in front of these two students, therefore, Weston found it very difficult to answer things. He found himself completely nonplussed. Nonplussed means confused, surprised partly maybe, but not knowing what to say. Okay? How to answer those questions. So I tried to bluster his way out with a show of offended authority. To bluster his way out means to talk in a very authoritative way. Okay? Instead of answering the questions, using his authority to, in a way, suppress the question. Okay, so that is how he tried to solve things. He could not effectively support the PT exercises for which he was partly responsible as having any definite physical advantage. So when he was asked what advantage do those PT exercises have for the health or whatever of the students, he couldn't answer those questions, though he had a share in deciding on those exercises. So though he had a share in the curriculum of PT, yet he couldn't answer why those exercises were chosen. Denham was a trained boxer. Okay, his training was of course not in school hours, outside school. Denham was a trained boxer and insisted that such exercises were only advantageous if practiced daily and for more sustained periods. So he had, in his training for boxing, he was also given lots of exercise and he knew how long they should be conducted and that you cannot have breaks in your exercise. But do it one day, another day, no, not doing it. So these breaks don't help in your exercise, help to make your exercise useful. So that's what he was telling the PT teachers. So he knew what he was saying when he was criticizing. PT twice weekly for 20 minutes was a waste of time, he asserted. So Denham said clearly, just 20 minutes of PT twice a week was a waste of time. No one benefited because that was not sustained. It should be every day and for longer than just 20 minutes. That's what Denham was saying. Now look how Miss Phillips comes again to the rescue. Once again, Miss Phillips took the reins and her stock prominently shot up 100-fold. Here stock means value. Those of you whose parents deal in stocks and shares know stock means the financial value of a particular company or a bank or whatever. So here, her value shot up immediately when she slowly came to the rescue of the PT curriculum and also therefore to Mr. Weston. So, she's reminded this, or her stock promptly, immediately shot up that, 100-fold. So immediately when she came to his rescue, her value, in a way, the respect people had for her shot up. That's what her value means. The stock means the respect and admiration people had for her, that shot up immediately 100-fold, very much. She reminded the school that every subject including PT and games, had been carefully considered and fitted into the teaching timetable. So each subject was thought over and put in the timetable very carefully, so that each student received maximum benefit from it. That every student should receive benefit, not just a few. So every student would get the most possible benefit. The school, with its limited facilities, must be considered in terms of the greatest good for the greatest number. So she said the school doesn't have a very big playground, okay, because he was criticizing the amount of space that they had for their PT. So he said the school with its limited, so its playground may not be limited. Within the limitations of the space available, they tried to make it useful for the maximum number of students, okay, and for their best, for their most, for their greatest good. So the true school was doing all that it could for all the students possible. Okay, and it could be beyond anyone's powers to please everybody. With limited facilities, you can't please everyone. Something that you have to try and please the most that you can, the maximum that you can. Some of you, she concluded, fixing Denham with innocent eyes, therefore looking very innocently at Denham, she concluded. So some of you, she said, are fortunate in your own fine physical development. So some of you have got the benefit of a very good physical development. Denham through his boxing training. So there he got a very good physical training and benefit. So some of you are fortunate in your own fine physical development and do not really need the few meager helpings of PT and games which the school can offer. So in a way, you do not need what the school is giving you. So some of you are lucky to get better physical training, and you don't need the little. Meager means small or little. The meager, where's that now? The meager helpings of PT, so what the school is doing for PT is small compared to what you receive, and therefore you don't need this. Therefore, and do not really need the few meager helpings of PT and games which the school can offer. Try to remember that there are others for whom our program is ideally suited, but there are others who have not had your training and they don't have other facilities either to get such training. For them, what we are offering itself is ideal. That's what she said. Okay? Denham was not to be put off. Denham was not to be put off by these sugary remarks. Why does he say sugary remarks? Because she was talking very sweetly to him, praising him that he's had such good physical training, and in between also telling him that he could, it may be that some of you older boys might even be able to help in that respect. She's also flattering him, saying that you can maybe help. Instead of criticizing, with your training you can help in the PT curriculum of the school. But he wasn't put off by such praise and rose in reply. Then why do we have to do PT? Why don't they take only the kids who need it? The rest of us can have a game of football or something instead of doing a lot of daft things that's no good to us. So he didn't get it so easily. He said, okay, let them do it. Why force us also to do it? This was a poser. A poser is a difficult question. But she came right back at him, who Miss Phillips came back, her baby blue eyes twinkling in her delight at this crossing of staves. So she was also enjoying this argument between Denham and her. So this is crossing of staves. Usually men also, people fought with sticks. Like we talk of sword fencing, they also had, in a way, fighting with sticks. So she was enjoying this sort of crossing of staves. Let us say it's as much an exercise of the mind as it is of the body done. The whole timetable in this school is meant to help you in the world after you leave here. And doing what you are told, in spite of not liking it, is part of the training. Therefore, part of your training is not only to do what you like, but also to accept to do what you may not like. In your job, you won't only be given what you like. You may have some parts of it which you don't like. So getting training to do also what you don't like is maybe part of our training. And I feel sure that you will see the point in that. That stopped him. Poor Denham knew that he'd been outwitted, but he could do nothing about it and sat looking rather rueful, while Miss Phillips' smile broadened. This really innocent-looking puss had gobbled her canary without leaving the tiniest feather. So here in a way that author is comparing Miss Phillips to a cat, and led him to a canary, a bird. The cat tries to eat the bird. And here he says, Miss Phillips gobbled her canary without even leaving a slightest feather left. So completely overtook him, or in a way you can say conquered him or won over him. I began to understand how it was that so slight a creature could cope so effectively with her class. Soon after this, as the morning ended, the head went on to the stage and closed the proceedings, expressing his pride in all the children and his deep appreciation of their efforts. E.R. Braithwaite. Thank you.